Hello, today I want to introduce you to a topic called integer error. But first let me give you some background information. To start, an integer is a variable. Variables correspond to memory location and store data values. There are many types of variables in C++, however the one we are focused on today is integer, or int for short. For a value to be considered an integer, it must be a whole number, and it can be either positive or negative. An integer is numerical data and requires 4 bytes of memory. The range for an integer is between -2,147,483,648 to 2,147,483,648. So, what exactly is an integer error, and why is it bad? Well, an integer error occurs when you code a program that tries to store a value that is too big or too small for the appropriate integer range. For example, if you compute an equation that yields a number bigger than the fixed amount, it will result in an integer overflow, and if you compute a number that's smaller than the fixed amount, it will yield in an integer underflow. Having an integer error in your program can cause unexpected behaviors and may cause the program to crash, or worse, allow for malicious software to enter your program. Let's look at some examples of what could qualify as an integer error. You may be thinking to yourself, how could anyone possibly make an integer error, especially when given such a wide range of numbers? Well, you'd be surprised. It's very easy to compute a big number when coding a mathematical equation. Sometimes coders are not sure of the results their equation is equaling, and which can cause errors. For example, let's say Pia works at a warehouse and she is trying to figure out the total number of items in a shipment. To find the value, she uses a 32-bit int and multiplies the number of boxes by the number of items per box. Unbeknownst to her, she computes a number so large it exceeds the 32-bit int limit. So instead of her output being the total number of items in a shipment, the program ends up crashing and gives corrupt data. You see, it is very easy for an integer error to occur in your program. Now that you know how it happens, how can you avoid it? Well, like they say, knowledge is power. You know better, so you do better. Knowing the ranges of each data type like integer in a program like C++ is a good way to avoid making such errors. Also, when you know the ranges of each data type, it allows you to pick the appropriate one for your program. For example, if you know the value you want to compute requires a decimal, an integer will not be the best option to use, since integer only allows for whole numbers. Lastly, always verify your data values before using it in calculations. Double check to make sure it is within the boundaries of your data type. To conclude, mistakes happen when coding all the time, which is why it is imperative to take your time and learn about the data and program you are using to avoid making such errors. That's all for today, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in.